What is up, everybody? Yes, it is time. We are finally here for the John Carpenter ranking. Over the last few months, I've been going through all the John Carpenter films, rewatching some, actually seeing some for the first time. That's really why I kind of started this review series. This is one of my favorite directors of all time. John Carpenter is responsible for putting out some of the most just astonishing films that mean a lot to me in my life in terms of how I view films, how I watch movies, and how I enjoy my movies. John Carpenter's a huge reason for that, and like all the catalog that he has, it's amazing. And there were 3 films in his film catalog or filmography that I hadn't seen yet, so I was like, why not rectify that and just do a review series, and I'll watch all his films and then we can eventually rank them. And today we're going to talk about all 18 of his theatrical released films, none of his television films. These are just theatrical released films. We're going to talk about them and rank them. I also have a playlist in the description that you can hit up down below in the comments, and also, in the description, if you want to check out my individual thoughts on any one of these films specifically, because I have reviews for all of them. But now that we got that out of the way, let's get down to the John Carpenter ranking. All 18 of his films. Roll it. Also, I want to start off with, before we begin the ranking, what comes into the criteria of this ranking is obviously I've reviewed and ranked all these films, so they do have a rating. That's obviously going to play a factor. Also, my taste is going to play a factor, but also when it comes to this ranking is rewatch value. That's specifically going to play a factor into 2 different ones or 4 different movies when we get into the ranking of like why they're at the spots they're at. So I'll tell you that because of rewatch value, and that's something else that I thought about when I was doing this ranking. Is more of like, I have all the films in my living room. I go in there, which one am I most likely going to grab first, then second, third? That's kind of how I thought about this ranking, but also, like I said, my taste and my reviews and how I feel about the films did play a factor as well. So now that we got all that out of the way, all the homework, all the, busy business stuff, let's get into this ranking. So coming in at number 18, the very last spot is going to be The Ward. This isn't an awful film. This is from 2010, and this is officially the last film that John Carpenter's ever directed. I hope we do eventually get another film by him, but now that it's been this long since 2010, I really don't think John Carpenter's going to come back and write and direct another movie. But The Ward is just, it's bland. That's a great way to describe it, is it's bland. It's the most uninteresting, the one out of all of the films in his catalog that's going to offer you the least amount of get back when you watch this film. Also, this is a premise that's been done before. A couple years prior, actually, a movie called Identity came out, and they did it so much better than this movie. But there is a cool cast in here, a very cute, beautiful cast, so that's something to watch this film for. Coming in at 17 is going to be Dark Star from 1974. This is the very first film that he put out outside of college, or his college project. This is a very young guerrilla groundmaking project by young creators, John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon. They ended up getting backing from a studio to turn this into a feature-length film. And this is one that it's kind of hard to rank. It's here at 17 because it's not bland. Like I said, it's not going to offer you anything. This one does offer you something. This is a creative film, and it's cool to go back to the beginnings to see where John Carpenter, to see those early, creativities working in his head as a young creator, and that he ended up spawning some of the best films ever in certain subgenres and all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to the clashing of tones, that's one thing that I kind of described in my review for this film. There's a clashing of tones. I like the sci-fi stuff and I like the horror stuff. I just don't like the comedy in this film, and there's actually just low budget constraints that really hurt this film as well. So that's why Dark Star is sitting here at this number 17 spot. Coming in at number 16 is going to be Ghosts of Mars. And if you were to talk to young Robert or young Norn Rad 89 from back in the day, like I was 12 or 13, I would have told you this is one of John Carpenter's best films. This is a film that out of all of his films has fell down the ranking the most. It's just because Ghosts of Mars as a child, like I loved Friday. I love Next Friday. I still love those films. And I think Ice Cube is amazing. I really respect his work as a rapper, as a creator, as an actor, all that kind of stuff. And to have him in this film, I just thought it was really cool. And the fact that John Carpenter directed it, it's a space sci-fi epic with these horror elements violence. It's got these gruesome, gory effects in it and possession themes and stuff. But that's one thing that kind of really hurts this film is there's too many side plots, too many themes, too many subgenres at play here. And we also have Natasha Henstridge as our lead in here. I'm sorry if I butchered that last name. She's our lead performance, and I think she is definitely the weakest character and actress in this film. I think she's fabulous in Species, and I love Species too, but in Ghosts of Mars, yeah, she is not it. This is definitely the wrong person you want to be carrying your film when it comes to this movie. But I also do have a soft spot for Ghosts of Mars too, because this is a time like John Carpenter's Vampires where John was really fascinated with New Mexico, and he came out here and he shot a bunch of films in New Mexico, like say he did John Carpenter's Vampires, then he did Ghosts of Mars. So I like returning to this film because it represents that era where John Carpenter was around here in New Mexico. And I'm like, damn, if I was only smart enough and old enough to find out and like go out there and seek him out, you know. But at this time, 2001, I was only like 10 going on 11, but still, it would have been so cool to just come across Ice Cube or John Carpenter in my hometown. Rolling in at the number 15 spot is going to be Village of the Damned. And this is one that as a kid and growing up, all the times that I've seen this film, it's so creepy. It's got such a vibe to it. This is actually John Carpenter's second stab at remaking a film. He did The Thing, which was a previous film, and then Village of the Damned. I believe the original one came out in the 60s. This one's from 1995. One huge thing I want to preface right away is a strong lead performance by Christopher Reeves. I think he does a beautiful job. He was my favorite part of the film watching it back in the day, and still today he is my favorite part of the film. Some of those third act moments he has with the children are the best in the movie. But when it comes to this movie in general, it needed more gore. They needed to lean more into the John Carpenter isms. I wanted more impressive, intense scenes. This is a very psychological, deep horror film that could have went for it, and I think this could have been one of the darkest John Carpenter horror films. They just didn't go all the way for it. When you watch it, it almost feels like it feels kind of like a TV movie, you know what I mean? Like they kind of like were like, all right, let's restrain yourselves. Don't put that much on screen. And I feel like if they would have just went all for it and had some of the best practical effects and some serious gore moments, it definitely would have helped the psychological horror and lifted this film up in the ranking. Coming in at number 14 is going to be Memoirs of an Invisible Man, and this was a first-time watch for me. This was one that I had no idea was a John Carpenter film, and after looking through his filmography, I looked at it and I was like, what? Like, I thought, to be honest, I thought this was a film that he just wrote or came up with or produced kind of thing, but didn't actually direct. But no, he directed this film. It stars Chevy Chase and Daryl Hannah, and this one's really surprising and entertaining. And I thought, for me, being an Invisible Man film is one of the most interesting ones I've seen. Sam Neill absolutely slays as our antagonist. I think this is one of my favorite performances by Sam Neill for sure. The thing that really hurts this film and holds it back from being higher up in the ranking is going to be it's unfocused. It's kind of a film that's confused about its own identity. I feel like at some points it feels like it's an origin story for like a Invisible Man hero type film. Then it's also a love story. Then it's just purely an Invisible Man film. It's kind of all of these films mashed together, and I feel like this film needed more focus. But probably a huge part of that is that I heard during production that Chevy Chase, John Carpenter just didn't have the best relationship at all. I think for them being the two leads of this film, you know, director and the lead actor, their butting heads and their confrontation actually does kind of affect the film on screen that you eventually... This is probably the one that's going to get me the most in trouble for the ranking, but of course this is just my opinions of John Carpenter's film. This isn't the right ranking or anything like that. This is just my feelings based on taste, based on what I love of his and all the films that he has, which I think there's a lot of great films. And when it comes to right here, starting at number 13, I think we're at officially the good films, going to the great films, going to some of the best of all time. And coming in at number 13 is going to be In the Mouth of Madness. This is one of those films that does have a creepy vibe to it. The story is really dark. Some of the body horror in here and just the shots in general and the cinematography, it's creepy. This is a scary film that definitely has an atmosphere. My main problem with this film, though, is that I feel like it's John Carpenter being more convoluted and more complex than he has to be. It felt like John Carpenter trying to be very Lovecraftian or be like Stanley Kubrick, which I'm like, that's not you, John. That's just not you. What John Carpenter does best is makes very simple concepts, but hones them to perfection and executes them well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's literally what he does. He takes very simple story concepts and does them expertly. But when you add in all these complex elements and all these things, I feel like this is one of those films that, like I said, it's too confusing for its own good. And also Sam Neill as the lead in this film. This is kind of different from Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which we just talked about. I love him as the antagonist in that film. When it comes to In the Mouth of Madness, this is one of those films that I think Sam Neill was kind of miscast. I don't really like his performance in this movie. Coming in at number 12 is going to be Prince of Darkness. It kind of felt very fitting to put In the Mouth of Madness and Prince of Darkness right next to each other, because when it comes to these two films, my enjoyment of them is it's splitting hairs, really. Like, In the Mouth of Madness, the reason it's just that low and 13, and this, I mean, not that low, but the reason it's at 13 and Prince of Darkness is at 12 is mainly just rewatch value. I feel like Prince of Darkness is actually scarier and it goes for it more. I like the horror elements, and for me, the story, the concept of this one is really good. I love the fact that we're taking, religion and science and melding these ideas together and creating this movie where Satan is an actual physical entity, and these people, these scientists and the priest played by Donald Pleasance and Victor Wong, who are amazing in this film, they have to actually deal with this as it starts possessing people, and it's coming down to the end of the world almost. There's some dark stuff happening. We have a great cameo by Alice Cooper as one of the hordes of kind of homeless people that chill outside of the church. So yeah, Prince of Darkness is one that I feel the foreboding, like, just end of a society. Like, it just feels that way. It feels like there's this darkness lumbering over you throughout the whole film. You watch it. This is just the main thing that really hurts this film for me, is also leaning into the concept, is that there are too many talking scenes and too many dialogue scenes that are very like up here, that kind of go above your head. And it's one of those films, out of all of John Carpenter's, like, I would say Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness are the prime examples of the ones that you have to watch more than once to really get the full effect of these movies. I don't think you're just going to watch Prince of Darkness once and just get everything out of it. Coming in at number 11, yes, we are very close to the top 10. We have Starman, and this was a first-time watch for me as well, and Starman greatly surprised me. We have two very huge, great emotional lead performances played by Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen. I think their chemistry on screen is beautiful. This is a film that I love the titular, just the story of it. It's the sci-fi love story about an alien who crash lands on our planet and takes the form and shape of her dead husband, and Karen Allen's character has to drive him across the country to Arizona to meet his people, to get back onto his ship so he can leave Earth, because the Earth is a hostile place. And I think this film is beautiful. It's got so many emotional, somber moments. Even the score by John Carpenter is something completely different. It's such a sad, somber score, but I like it. But it's a score that almost brings tears to your eyes because of the way it feels, but it also does have hopeful notes in it as well. So I think the score does a huge thing in lifting this film. This is one of those films, though, that I feel like is a little bit too long. You could have probably shaved off about 10 to 15 minutes of this film and maybe tightened it up, and it would have been a better film. Also, there's some choices by the writing just in the third act that there are story moments that I just don't really think we needed to have that emotional gut punch. I think it still would have hit hard no matter what, but there's, like I said, story choices in the third act that I just didn't really, jive with. But Starman is one, at being a first time watch, and for being a John Carpenter film, so different from his other films. This isn't a horror film. I mean, it's a sci-fi film, but it's not horror in any way, shape, or form. There is kind of a body horror moment in the early moments of the movie when he transforms into her husband, but besides that, this is predominantly a sci-fi love story, and I think this is the perfect example of a movie that shows the versatility of John Carpenter. Now we're here at the top 10, and before we get down to that, please, would you do me a favor? drop a like, share the video. It takes just a second. It's free. It doesn't hurt you at all. Just poke that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. But coming in at number 10, we have Escape from LA. And I know this is one that's kind of, people are going to be like, what the hell? Like, why Escape from LA is above Starman and it's above Prince of Darkness? Escape from LA is a huge reason why. It's because I love Snake Plissken. I think that's one of the greatest characters that Kurt Russell's ever played. I know Escape from LA is kind of a carbon copy of Escape from New York. It's really just the same story with a few different changes in it. But Escape from LA, I love that it is kind of a tongue-in-cheek, almost satirical nature look at Escape from New York, and there's actually footage of John Carpenter talking about this film where he thinks Escape from LA is actually better than New York. I don't feel that way, but there are moments and things I love about Escape from LA better than New York. I just think as a whole, the films, I think Escape from New York is better. But I'm still not going to be mad about taking another adventure with Snake Plissken. And this time, like I said, we go to LA. We have Pam Grier in here, who is absolutely fabulous. She's beautiful. And I think Steve Buscemi in here, just a classic side character. Every time you see him pop up in movies, I'm always going to smile anytime I see Steve Buscemi. So yeah, Escape from LA is one of those films that just takes me back to being a child, because both of these films, Escape from New York and Escape from LA, are two films that I discovered at a young age that I really didn't even know were John Carpenter films, but they actually, let me know that at a young age I loved dystopian future films and post-apocalyptic films, films about what it's going to be like 20 or 30 years from now. I loved seeing the ideas and creators and writers and directors come up with what kind of future it was going to be like here in America. And Escape from LA is one that it's kind of scary, but it looks like it could be a possible future. But that's what I mean. This is a scary type movie in that aspect, but it's also tongue-in-cheek funny, and I think it pokes fun at itself, and it knows what it is. And I think John Carpenter and Kurt Russell had a lot of fun making this film. Rolling in at our number 9 spot is going to be Assault on Precinct 13, and this was John Carpenter's stab at an action thriller film. This is something that is also completely different, like Starman. This is a very unique film in his catalog. It's thrilling. It's got some really intense gun sequences. Also, this film is daring for the 70s, which that's why I love going back to 70s films, is you can tell in the 70s, creators, directors, and writers were taking risks. I mean, in this film, they shoot a child at an ice cream truck. There's a young child that gets shot in this film, and I feel like that's just very rare. You didn't really see child deaths in movies that often, or even visceral violence like that, and I think Assault on Precinct 13 is one of those perfect movies where it takes a great cast, these cool characters, puts them in a situation that's intense, it's thrilling, and it's like, it's one night, it's like a 24-hour period or a 12-hour period, and just spending time with these characters as they're trying to survive in this precinct from the gang that's trying to infiltrate the building. Fantastic. Like I said, even the remake is pretty good. The remake with Ethan Hawke is still pretty solid too, but I think it doesn't even touch this original film. There's just something about the vibes of it being in the 70s that really hit hard. And yeah, John Carpenter did a really good job. Mainly it's just budget constraints with this one. That was my main negative, is there's some moments and also some character decisions that I think weren't really good. Coming in at number 8, we have Show Me. Yes, Christine. John Carpenter taking a stab at a Stephen King adaptation. Christine is one of those films that, man, you take a car and you make it scary, you know what I mean? Like something like Joyride. Like John Carpenter's masterfully took this Plymouth Fury and made it scary as fuck. Like, this is one of those films that you just feel the vibe. It's a creepy film. It's one of those perfect films to put on during the fall season. And I also love the lead performances too. I mean, Keith Gordon as Arnie Cunningham, great job. And his chemistry with his best friend, I think, and Dennis, some of the best stuff on screen. Some of the best moments in the film are how their relationship is as being best friends, because Arnie's more, that nerdy kid, and Dennis is more the football jock and star and everything. But yeah, this is one of those films that has a creepy score as well, and it just goes for it. The only reason, to be honest, that Christine is not higher is once we're getting to this area from 8 on up, these are some of the best films in their subgenres that they're in. John Carpenter is just a slam dunk home run hitter a lot of the times, and there's just some other films that I prefer to watch over this film. That's the only reason why Christine's sitting here at number 8, but this is a very solid, one of his greatest films of all. Coming in at number 7, we have John Carpenter's The Fog. Definitely his creepy, atmospheric film. I think this is the creepiest one. This is one of those films that is perfect for a rainy, foggy day, or it's just that gloomy day where it's cloudy. This is the movie you want to watch. It's like an Are You Afraid of the Dark, story moment, one of those episodes, but turned into a feature-length film. I think, this one, when it comes to the fog effects, the practical effects, John Carpenter and his crew and Tommy Wallace and all them, they did a great job using their talents, because the fog effects in here, they make it its own entity. It's actually something that's scary. It's not like it's physically attacking you, but the fog has a personality in this film and you can feel it. And for me, the only thing that I ever had wrong with this film was kind of the third act. This is one of those films that I love the first act, I love the second act, but for me, the third act is the weakest part of the film, which it's just always been that way for me, but it doesn't hurt me so much where I don't like this film. I love this film. I love returning to this film. It's just when I take the journey, I have so much more fun with the first half and all that kind of stuff. And then once we get into the last 12 minutes of the film, that I just feel like that should be the epic point where we're like, oh, all these characters are coming together, but it just never hits that way for me. But another thing too with The Fog, beautiful, amazing cast. We have Jamie Lee Curtis in here, Janet Leigh, Adriana Barbeau, Tom Atkins, great cast, a lot of reoccurring characters in the John Carpenter film catalog. So there's a lot to love about The Fog. I'm not going to argue anybody who has this as number 1, because this is literally, like I said, probably when I think of his films, this is probably one of the creepiest and scariest films out of all of them. It's just, like I said, when it comes down to this top 8, there's so many heavy hitters, and for me, there's just other films that I would prefer to watch, either based on tone, or I love the characters, or I love that journey more, but The Fog is still a very strong film. Now, coming in at number 6, we have Escape from New York, and I also just kind of wanted to show this steelbook off, because this steelbook is super sexy, and the first journey we ever take with Snake Plissken right here, Escape from New York, and this was my introduction to Kurt Russell. As far as I can tell, when I remember watching this film as a kid, this was my first introduction to him. So I just thought Kurt Russell was the most badass, coolest dude on the planet. I love the fact that this feels like a video game. It definitely feels like that story. Like you can make a video game to this movie and it would play out perfect. You're a one man on a mission, no backup. They send you in there to rescue the president, and bring him back, perfect setup for a video game. But in terms of a movie, John Carpenter expertly executes it. And that's what I'm talking about when I was saying earlier, when it comes to simple premises, that's what John Carpenter does the best. I'm not saying he can't do complex stories. It's just when it's a simple story, a man on a mission going to save a president, he just knows what to do. He knows how to focus on the surroundings and actually make the world feel like a world. Have these really creative characters in there. Some characters that don't even have lines of dialogue or have very few lines of dialogue, but they, it's potent. You feel them on screen. The Duke in here, a great villain as well. Even though I do kind of prefer our villain from Escape from LA, but yeah, Escape from New York. This is one that the third act I love. The last 10 minutes of this film is probably the best of this movie. And it's just one of those movies that when you're taking that journey, oh man, I can't wait to get to the last 10 minutes of this movie. And Escape from New York is a prime example too of one of those films. Like anytime it's on TV, if I catch it on TV or there's any part of it, I'm going to sit down and watch it. My chores could kind of go F themselves because they're going to get forgotten, and I'm going to sit down and watch this movie. Now we're here at the top 5, and I know it feels like such a long journey. It's been a long video. I hope you guys got some snacks and some drinks. Take a snack break, take a drink break, go grab something before we get down to the top 5. But coming in at our number 5 spot is going to be Big Trouble in Little China. And this is one that I wanted to talk about because when it comes to Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China, I actually gave Escape from New York a better rating than Big Trouble in Little China. But when it comes to these films, these two are a prime example of the rewatch value. And it's very similar to Escape from LA and Starman. Those were the other two that at the spots they were at, the reason they're there mainly is because of rewatch value. I just know for a fact there are more times in my life I'm going to watch Big Trouble in Little China over Escape from New York. I just adore Jack Burton, and that's probably my second favorite character that Kurt Russell's ever played. But Big Trouble in Little China, just that kung fu nature of it, the fantasy nature, and also the comedy. This is one where I think the comedy is actually funny. It helps the film. It adds another layer to the movie. Lo Pan, I think, is one of the coolest villains we've ever had in a movie. He's so charismatic and so awesome, like, in the design of that character and the three storms. Chef's kiss. It's straight out of like a Mortal Kombat game. Love it. But Big Trouble in Little China, like I said, it's just so much fun being on that story and being on that journey. And in terms of rewatch value, like I said, there's just more times in my life where I'm going to choose to watch that film. And that's why I put it above Escape from New York, even though I think this as a whole and critiquing it and a film as itself, I think Escape from New York is a better film. But for me, as a ranking, favorites and John Carpenter movies, Big Trouble in Little China is going to sit comfortable here at the number 5 spot. Coming in at number 4 is going to be They Live. And this one is really fun to talk about because I'm a huge wrestling fan. If you don't know that or you're new to the channel, I'm really big into wrestling. I love AEW, WWE. Wrestling has been a huge part of my life forever. Roddy Piper teaming up with John Carpenter to do a sci-fi action film. Come on. It's not going to get freaking better than that. And I think a lot of people forget that Roddy Piper, like, he really was a character. He was a character actor. He knew what he was doing, and he was a good actor. His character in here is amazing. And I love the fact that this is that classic Western story, like, you know, a stranger strolling into a town, making a difference for a moment, and just kind of, you know, coming into this town and seeing the aspects of what's going on. That's what this story kind of harkens back to, movies like that back in the day, those old-timey Westerns. And the score in here is beautiful too, and I think They Live is a fantastic film, and it speaks to more nowadays when it comes to consumerism and control and what the actual social media and the bigwigs are trying to do to our society. This film actually has a lot to say right now, and I think They Live is one of those films that's a prime example of a movie that was ahead of its time. Another beautiful cast member, Keith David, I think is awesome in here. Him and Roddy Piper have one of the coolest fight scenes that's ever been put to screen. Like, it's so aggressive. It's just one of those fight scenes that you really feel every punch, and of course that helps out that Roddy Piper was as a wrestler. He's basically like a stuntman. When you do wrestling, you could basically be a stuntman for movies, so that's one thing that helps that fight scene. But They Live is, yeah, definitely one of those films. Like, so many iconic lines, like, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Like, there's just so many cool lines in here. And for me, like I said, this is one of those films that every time, kind of like Escape from New York, every time it's on, I'm going to stop and watch it. I love returning to this film. My only negative with this film, the only nitpick that I've ever had with They Live, is I do feel like the ending is a little anticlimactic. I just wanted our I don't know if it's because I wanted our protagonist to survive. I know, spoiler alert, but we've already reviewed and talked about these films, and a lot of these films are decades old, but I just wanted so much more for our protagonists. I feel like they succeed at the end, but I wanted a better, more, you know, wholesome succeeding ending, not one that we get. And it's just, yeah, that's my only nitpick with They Live. But besides that, fabulous film. Coming in at number 3, the bronze medal for the John Carpenter ranking is going to be John Carpenter's Vampires. I'm sorry, I'm like having a hard time pointing it right there. John Carpenter's Vampires. It's no secret that that is one of my favorite vampire films of all time. When we get to this upper echelon right here, the top 3, these are some of the greatest films in their subgenres of what they're in. And when it comes to vampire horror, John Carpenter's Vampires was one of those first films that I got introduced to, that I was like, this is what I want from vampire films. I want these badass hunters, you know, James Woods and Daniel Baldwin with this amazing team of badass hunters, and they're hunting vampires. I also like the Western feel of this one, and this was the other film that, besides Ghosts of Mars, that John filmed out here in New Mexico. That's another reason why I really love it. Definitely leans in and sets the vibe to the film. But also, like I said, Valak, the vampires, they're so aggressive, so mean in this film. Valak has one of the coolest just vampire wrecking scenes ever, when those hunters are all chilling at the motel and they think they're having fun and they're drinking beers and whiskey and having fun with their girls and they're partying. Man, when Valak shows up, he is there to shut that fucking party down, and I think it's so cool. So yeah, for me, this is a film that it's sexy, it's dangerous, it's action packed, and it's everything that I want in a vampire film. Blade is another film that's very similar to that, very much like that. Underworld, I like those kind of vampire films, and John Carpenter's vampires will always be that one that when I saw it for the first time, I was like, damn, it just hit hard. This is one that I think I was probably like 10. I was probably like 10 or 11 when I discovered this film. And this was also my first introduction to James Woods. So I thought James Woods was cool as hell. You know what I mean? Being the leader of this vampire hunter group. But yeah, for me, being that Southwestern kind of, feel to it, that cowboy nature, hunting them down. Also the religion aspect of how the church actually knows about Valak and the vampires and they're trying to cover it up. So many layers to this film and such an action-packed third act. This one is fucking amazing. Like I said, I don't really have any negatives with John Carpenter's vampires. This is one that I love it. I eat this one up. Every time I watch it, it just gets better and better for me. And that's kind of how it is with these top three films. Like I said, when it comes to John Carpenter, these are some of the greatest films in their subgenres of horror that they're in. And for me, vampires will always be the king, one of the top vampire films in my lifetime that I love. Now, we only have 2 films left, and because of process elimination, I think you all know which 2 are left. But coming in at that number 2 spot, getting the silver medal, is going to be John Carpenter's Halloween. And that's kind of why I wore my Team Tina shirt right here, Halloween 5, Team Tina. I love the fact that Halloween is something that John Carpenter started, and if it wasn't for him, I would have never got Tina. Like, this is one of my favorite characters in the Halloween franchise. And I know John, if you asked him, he's one of those people that didn't want the Halloween franchise to be what it is today. He wanted to do like anthology stories and change the characters and change the stories every time, but they took place during the Halloween season. That's a really cool idea, and I love that. But I fucking love Michael Myers more. I'm sorry. Like, it's just, that's how it is. What he started with that first film. I've talked about this film ad nauseum on my channel, so it's kind of hard to just, not say some things that I've already said. But yeah, that first film, when it comes to a slasher movies, when it comes to vibes, wholesome autumn feeling, fuck, John Carpenter's Halloween is top tier. Like, this is the perfect autumn watch for sure. And for me, it's like warm comfort food. I love digesting this film because it's always going to make me happy. It's like, it's been there for me for so many years. Just the whole franchise in general. Like, whenever I've been sad or down or depressed or even happy, like, the Halloween franchise has been there. And it's one of my favorite franchises of all time. And that's why what John Carpenter started with that first film, it's hard to knock it at all. There's some things you can say, like the acting's not that great. Some of them are very green. They're young actors. The dialogue's not that great. It's slowly paced. Yeah, there's things you can say about it, but it's one of the grandfathers. It's literally one of the films that laid down some of the templates for so many horror films and so many slashers after. And they have to give a nod to John Carpenter's Halloween. You have to talk to that film and give its praise because it's the one that started a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? And for me, Michael Myers, I've dressed up as him multiple times for Halloween. Like, it's just such a cool character. So yeah, there's really not much else I could say about Halloween. This is just one of those films that will always be here. Like, and when it comes to the John Carpenter rankings, like, yeah, it's my top 3 were solidified. I was fine. It was the rest of the films that I kind of had a hard time placing. I was like, where are they going to go? Which one? But these top 3 were just solidified in their spots. There was no way they were going to be moved at all. Now, coming in at the top dog, the number 1 spot is going to be John Carpenter's The Thing. And this is one that I think this is the greatest, or one of the greatest remakes of all time. John Carpenter, what he did with this film, it was so ahead of its time that people didn't really understand it. When it first came out, this was completely lambasted and shunned, and there were awful reviews. Did not make its money back. John Carpenter's career basically almost ended after The Thing because this film did so bad. But this is a film that oh my God, it's hard for me to talk about it because it is kind of like John Carpenter's Halloween and Vampires. One of those films, when I watch it, it just gets better every time. What he did with this film in creating that isolation feeling of having these guys in Antarctica dealing with a shape-shifting alien that you have no idea who to trust. These characters, you're looking at everybody like they're a threat or they're the next person that's going to come at you. There is such a tension in this film and such a vibe that is just, oh, it really gets retched up every time the movie just goes on, and you get to that third act, the tension is fully palpable and you can feel it. And this is one of those films that, in terms of body horror, is the king. One of the best. When you talk about practical effects and you talk about body horror, this is one of those films that you show people that are up and comers or people that want to create effects. No, this is how you do it. This is one of those films that stands the test of time, and it's proof is because of the effects. When you watch this film today, and I'm talking about today, it's 2026. You watch this film today, the effects hold up still because they are real. It's something you could tactically touch on screen. And what John Carpenter and them did, I love it. This is one of the scariest, creepiest films he's ever done. When it comes to scary films, out of all of his movies, I would say The Thing and The Fog. Those are the two films that John Carpenter's done that are the scariest movies he's ever done. And because of this one, it's like I said, that alien being able to shapeshift and being able to take over the planet. That scene when that one doctor is just looking, when he's just looking at the computer and it comes up on the computer that Earth's population could be taken over in so many hours. It's like, it blows your freaking mind, and it tells you and shows you why these characters should be so scared. And yeah, John Carpenter's The Thing will always be up here. This is one of my favorite horror films of all time. It does so good at everything that it's trying to do. I mean, this is another one too. Kurt Russell as MacReady. Great. Great. Love seeing Kurt Russell. Anytime Kurt Russell teams up with John Carpenter, I'm going to be there. And like I said, they do some amazing films together. But yeah, him as MacReady, one of the best. Childs in here. Keith David as Childs. Fantastic little almost antagonist character to MacReady with butting heads. But then you see them at the end just standing there, in the fire as the whole building is like blown up. They're in the snow and they know one of them's the Thing. Like, yeah, that is some potent stuff. This is a film that'll ring true to the day I die. Like I said, one of the greatest horror films of all time, one of the greatest remakes of all time, and John Carpenter really did knock this one out of the park when he brought his talents to this film. And I'm glad that now we can all hail this film as one of the greatest, because I think it's kind of sad that this film almost ended his career because of how bad it did in theaters when it came out. Thank you for sticking around me all for this video. I know this was a very long one. We made it. This was a long video, I know, but we ranked all of John Carpenter's films. This was a fun review series. There was a lot of great times digesting and talking about all these films with you all. But now it is complete. It is done. We are now on to the next thing, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the thing that I had voted on for most of my community tab. I had a community page tab where you guys can vote on what is the next franchise or thing you all wanted me to talk about, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre won out. So be sure you like, share, subscribe, and have that notification bell poked so you're notified anytime I drop videos, because we have other videos coming. And also share your ranking of John Carpenter's films or the films that you've seen of his down below in the comment section. I would love to hear from all of you. But most importantly, y'all know what's up. Have a safe and happy day. Peace out.